when I got into the union, I was, of course, a horrible plumber. They don't know anything about me. I never learned in the union way. So I made it my goal every day I walked in to outperform every other plumber on the job. That way nobody could ever come in and say, oh, well, you know what? He does half quality work. He does anything like that. And I love that, because whenever I did have a problem with a guy who was a hardcore union guy on the job, we went up and talked to the superintendent, and he's like, Roger sits on a bucket. Roger's got headphones in. Roger does this. Roger does this. He said, okay, but how's Roger's work? Man, the guy kind of puts his head down. He said, look, you don't have any problem with his work. He puts it in true, square, and plumb every time. Tradesmen built America. Not policymakers or desk jockeys, but hardworking, blue-collared men and women. Join me, Roger Wakefield, on conversations with some of the nation's most successful skilled laborers. This is the Trade Talks. Number one, this is an interview I've wanted to do. I've heard you speak on stages. I have actually got to come over and sit in your office and talk to you. And I think what you know for plumbing in the plumbing industry is phenomenal. You've done things that a lot of us have not done. But I want to go back and I want to start in the beginning. What made you pick plumbing? And I think I already know, but I want the people listening to know why you picked plumbing.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, growing up, I went out with my dad all the time, and he would, pay me $20 to come dig ditches and stuff with him. And he'd always be like, hey, if you don't go to school, you're going to end up in this ditch. And that was kind of comical, because I went to school. I was going to college. I was like, I'm getting through 4 years. I don't care what happens. This is going to happen. I was very diligent about it. And then probably when my junior in college, my dad started trying to get me to come over, and he's doing what a lot of guys do. I mean, he had his own business. It was just two of them, and he was out in the truck all the time. My wife now is my girlfriend then, and she was like, yeah, I remember your dad on a TV tray trying to do invoices and pay bills and all that. And so, yeah, it was really funny, because it was the thing I was not going to do. And I literally went to work with my dad and said, I told him, I was like, Dad, I'm doing your books while I was in college. I go, you're doing 350,000 in sales. You're pulling down 100, and you want to pay me 27? Not going to happen. I go, you don't have enough money. I go, he goes, well, let me worry about that. You come to work for me. And, it's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day just about being kind of an entrepreneur, having your own business. I said, what's funny is how he got me to work for him was he said, hey, you'll never make more money than, working for someone else than you will working for yourself. And I was just kind of like stuck with me, and I knew what his numbers were. And I was like, $100,000 back in 1990, 91 was pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'll come in and help him, almost like as a, partly as a family obligation, but partly because of that statement. And so I just went to work, and then 33, years later, I'm still there. And it's kind of funny, because I was like, that was the thing. I was telling my daughter, she was, what do I do after college? What do I do? And I said, honey, like, if you want to, I can't tell you the future, because I made a really bad decision back in 1993 to go full time with Dad. I go, if you took my other options and took that option. And she goes, yeah, but look at today. I go, yeah, but it wasn't like that then. And I said, no, I'll be honest. I said, if you want to take a book that's, really popular out there, it's called How Did Truett Do It? It was the Chick-fil-A story. Mm-hmm. I can kind of give you a synopsis for it. It's work hard, work hard, work hard, then work hard, and then work hard again. And so I'll be honest, I probably don't work as hard now as I used to back then, but now things are a lot different, and my job's probably more, I was telling somebody the other day, I said, man, I haven't been on tools in so long. I said that I would be scared to even advise you how to put a water heater in right now. So, but yeah, it is really interesting how you get there, but it was a family deal. And I think what helped is, just going to school and getting the business education. We were involved in an organization, called SGI Now Certain Path. And that's what I always felt that place was. That was the business school for the plumbing guys, the guys that were in the trades, and they're struggling and they're trying to figure it out, just like my dad was. And all I did was come in and go, hey, Dad, we can do some systems and processes that can do those invoices for you. He had to do every invoice. So as he did 350, he had 45,000 sitting on his desk for like more than a month. So he hadn't even got it to the contractors or whoever yet. And so I was like, Dad, by the time they pay you, you're going to be 90 to 120 days out. And it was just a cash flow thing. We're borrowing money to make payroll. Mm-hmm. Everybody I think in this industry has been there, done that. And so that was a big thing for us. Like it was just the systems and the processes. and then kind of having like the business knowledge, on top of the technical knowledge, which I think is a key thing. I don't think you can just be a businessman and come in and run a great plumbing company. I think you have to have the technical know-how, know what your guys are doing, what expectations are. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's really hard for you not to. But I do believe in guys that are technically sound, maybe even partner with a business guy, or themselves going and learning, just like what you did, like going to SGI and organizations like that, and really getting a business education on how to budget, how to do your P&L, how to read your P&L, how to plan and forecast, how to, what do you do when you get a certain amount of trucks? How does your budget change? So there's a lot of things that it's funny, everybody that comes to this industry that comes out from Fortune 500 companies or master degree people or whatever, they're very successful in their own right. They come into what we do and work for me, and they'll go, oh my gosh, man, no idea.
You bet.
There was so many buttons and levers and things going on here. I thought y'all just went to people's houses and they fixed their stuff and they paid you.
You bet. And you take your money right off the top.
Yep. And I go, yeah, but there's all kinds of different things going on, and they know that, like, customer service, making sure that they're happy, making sure your guys can talk to the customers. You have to training the guys, all these things that are really, that you don't think about, that you think it really simplistically, but it is tough. It's a business that if it wasn't, then everybody'd be in it. And now I think, the big, companies and large P groups and all that are going, hey, I think what's happened though is I think we got a lot more figured out as a group, as a total trade group. I think we figured out, hey, here's how we price.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped doing what I call working for beer money. That was another thing my dad said. I remember years ago, I go, Dad, we could go get this job and we could discount to here, and man, we could make this and do these things. And he go, hey, Jimmy, we can go broke just sitting right here watching TV. We don't have to go out and work our ass off to basically go broke, because that's what so many guys were doing. And you see these guys and they come in like the badge of honor, like, oh man, we only charge this much. And you see it when we were in certain path. The guys that were new coming in, the first thing that they almost always did was tell them to raise their price.
Every company.
Yes.
Every company.
Yes.
You're
because
right.
they come in and it's like they're barely making it. And just not a huge price increase, like a 10% price increase, can just change their whole life. And the funny thing is, all their customers are fine, because I always talk about the value that you bring. It's like, somebody goes, well, these guys, they rip me off. And I go, well, I mean, did you really enjoy the experience? I mean, did you go to Neiman's and buy a shirt and go, oh, they ripped me off? Well, you went there because it was a special shirt, or, hey, there was something, it's like Starbucks coffee. It costs $5-6. You can go get it $1 at QT. Why are you drinking it at Starbucks? Well, because it's an experience. It's like what you do when you go in, and it's the surroundings. It's like everything, and how the coffee tastes and the variety that you can get. And so it's like, what I always tell people is like, hey, if you show up when you're supposed to be there and you do what you're supposed to do, and you make the customer happy, because we're dealing with a bad situation. You're not happy about spending this money.
Ever.
Exactly. You're like, oh, great, I got to buy new water heater.
Yeah, I get plumbing problems today.
Yeah. So, you don't want to do that. But can we make it to where it's like that thing when they tell you, I don't know how many times I heard this. It's like, hey, Jimmy, you did such a great job. Man, I've never had anybody better come in my home like this, but I hope I never see you again.
You bet.
Because it's not but we're trying to make a bad situation, a tolerable one, and I think that's what we really focus on, is always about what are you doing and how you doing it. Like, it's that simple. If you want to be a great contractor, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, even if it's tough. That's really easy to say, but none of us cuss in church. But as soon as we get out in the parking lot, somebody cuts us off. Okay, we're doing all that. I go, it's the same thing. It's kind of what, when you squeeze a man or a company, what's in a man comes out of a man. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. Like, how does a company react and respond to mistakes? How do they, what do they do? And I'll tell you that we fold up like a lawn chair. I'll just be like, man, they go, but we're right. But hey, we're the right guy. I go,
it doesn't matter.
Just do it. Just take care of it. Look, the amount of money and time you're going to spend arguing about it, if you took your hourly rate for how much you get paid, you're going to go, okay, that's probably half that. You're arguing about $200.
You bet.
And I said, just, man, like, let that go. I'm really proud of the fact that, we may do $100 million this year. And just the fact that you're not in lawsuits over stuff like that, where I have friends that, and they have, $4 million company and they have a lawyer on retainer. I'm like, you ever think that maybe you're paying that guy way too much money because you're just stuck? Hey, I want to be, I'm right. My dad always said that too. Hey, and you can be driving the right way down the road and see a car coming your way and go, well, hey, I'm right. I got the right of way here.
I'm not moving.
Yeah. As you die, it's like, that's exactly the same thing. It's like, sometimes I think we kind of cut our nose off to spite our face as contractors. I think sometimes when there's a miscommunication, usually that's the problem. We don't really find out, like, hey, what could we have done so that we're not in this situation? So that's a big one for me, is just trying to, we really want to make sure our customers have a great experience. And my guys know, because I talk about that Starbucks experience all the time. I think it's a book. And I said, I go, basically, guys, hey, what's your coffee taste like? If they say something, I go, what's your cup of coffee? What experience are you giving this customer? Is it out of this world, or is it just okay? So I think that's what, as an industry, we've just got better at customer service, better at, you never saw a dude in a white uniform ever, like ever.
Pull up as a plumber.
Yes. Never. And our guys argued so much when we did those. They're like, oh my gosh, you're going to get dirty. And man, I was like, your gray ones get dirty too, or your blue ones get dirty too. But I go, that's what our customers like. That's what they like to see. They like to see that clean cut look. And I said, so, it really is, it's interesting, like, over the years, how much it's changed. And that was something else early on. I wanted to take that persona of you seeing a guy with Bubba teeth, his gut sticking out the bottom of his shirt,
and the crack,
and the butt crack in the back, and the old joke. I wanted to go, hey, let's just trash that, where no one talks about that, and let's talk about, guys that are the guys that are college educated are sending their sons and daughters our way to, like, go, y'all get paid. Yeah, we're going to pay you 45 to 50 grand a year for an apprenticeship, not asked to be paid. Then when they get done, if they're worth their salt, they should make, they'll make $70,000 to $80,000 just right out of the gate.
Hmm.
And I said, they'll go, well, hey, what's top guy make? You go, 185. And they're like, what? I go, yeah. And they're just shocked and blown away that a guy in the trade can make that. And I think that's where there's this evolution that's been going on, I think, for the last probably 15 to 20 years. It's a really awesome evolution in our industry. Really cool about where we're going and what we're doing. So I'm still excited about it, but it's funny the standard now is so high that used to, if you put shoe covers on or laid out drop cloths at your job, people are blown away. It was like some special thing. Now it's the expectation. Mm-hmm. If you walk in a customer's house with your boots on, or they'll be like,
what was your floor savers?
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's where I think what's really cool is that has really happened. What people picture in their head when you say plumber, it's changed in their minds and in what they think, and that is really cool. So I'm really excited about that part, just where we're going and where we've been. And now somebody comes in and starts going, oh my God, these guys, they charge too much, they charge this. Those guys are almost looked upon like, what are you doing, working for beer money? Like, everyone's got smart. They're like, man, we deserve to make money. And my thing was, I told the guys, I go, if y'all were doctors and lawyers and there were this few of you, y'all would be making 10 times an hourly rate than what you should be. When I got in 93, I remember my dad laughing at the guy at the office that wanted to make $16 an hour, had a master plumbing license and been there for 30 years. And he literally laughed out loud. He goes, oh my God, that guy's crazy. And I'm like, we don't even pay helpers 16. And I know that's a long time ago, but it was relative to our current economy. The guys weren't making it. And I feel like probably just in the last maybe 8 years, the guys are at least getting close to what they should be making, and that's what I tell the guys in orientation. I said, hey, look, I'm going to tell you guys, we're not the cheapest guys in town, but I also want to tell you this. If we're the cheapest guys in town, who else are the cheapest guys in town? I said, you guys are, because it's all math. All the math happens to make the company run successfully. And I said, you're going to be background checked. You're going to be drug tested. If you're going to be really good at what you do, you need to get paid. And people will say all the time, oh, y'all have TV commercials and radio. That's why y'all are so expensive. I go, man, advertising is like usually about 6 to 8%, like over all the years, 6 to 8% of every dollar. 40% of every dollar are our people, all the people that work there.
You bet.
I was like, so, really you're paying for that dude that you said was so awesome that came to your house and showed up with a smile on his face, did a really hard job that nobody wanted to do and got it done quickly and got out of your house. That's what you're paying for. So
I love that. One of the first things you mentioned, and the guy who helped get me in plumbing originally, whenever I went back to talk to him a few years later about starting my own company, one of the big things he says, get ready to work harder than you've ever worked. And I thought, man, you're nuts. Everybody opens their own company because they don't want to work as hard. And in the beginning, I think I was working 20 hours a day. You do everything you can during the day. You're out running the calls. You're answering the phone. You're coming in at night. You're billing. You're ordering. You're doing everything like your dad. Here I am on a TV tray trying to do everything that I can. And it takes a long time before that changes. So that's one thing I tell people in the beginning, like, get ready to work harder than you've ever worked. And to me, that is such a big, big deal. Most people don't think so. But, another thing, and I don't know, and first of all, I should have told this earlier. I'm talking to Jimmy Dale, owner of Baker Brothers, part owner now, or what's your title now? Or do you even work there anymore?
I'm president of Baker Brothers, and actually you just have a part ownership in Wrench, the whole entire Wrench group. So that's who we had sold to, was Wrench Group, and then they've been doing really well, and we're everything's been great. I don't have the bad story of I sold my company and they fired all my good people and did all those things. They're pretty much just like, hey, you run the company the way you want to run it. And we just got to a point where we got big enough that being the Lone Ranger wasn't cool anymore. Like there were a lot of families that I had a responsibility for. That was, like I said, I always say a lot of things my dad said because he taught me a lot. And he said, hey, every decision that you make is not just your economy that it affects. It affects all the people and all the families' economy that are here. And he goes, so at a point, we have like probably about 200, we had 200 plus employees, 230 employees at the time. We're getting to a place that's no man's land. No one had heard of companies like getting over $30 million in our industry. And the ones that I saw, partnerships, 2 guys, and I get pretty innovative. So it's like, hey, at a point they could get dangerous. So I really started looking like pretty early on, right before there's a big, huge bump in the market too. And I just was like, man, I need a partnership. And I went and looked for another company that was local. And I said, hey, let's push in together. I was looking for a partnership because I was realizing where we were going was kind of uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. And the guys I partnered with, they were a Wrench Group. It was Alan O'Neill. He had been doing it 40 plus years.
You bet.
Like Paul Kelly is out in Phoenix and he had been 40 plus years, and Ken Haynes out in Atlanta at Coolray, and he'd been doing that 40 plus years. And I go, hey, these guys are like, I know, the guys in Atlanta and Phoenix, they're ahead of us, by quite a bit. And so they've kind of been there, done that. So, hey, I can learn from that. And that's kind of how I came into it. And man, it's been a blessing. It really has. We came in, and now we're, like I said, we were 37 million at the time in 2017, and we'll probably break the $100 million mark this year, just here in Dallas. So DFW. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But I would have never been able to do that profitably without learning from other people and being able to model after these other companies.
I like that, and I want people to hear this. You were 350,000 in 93 when it was your dad. Yep. You were helping him.
Uh-huh.
So you've gone from 350,000 a year to almost 100 million a year.
Uh-huh.
What helped you get there? Was it just the group? I mean, look, I've been in Dallas. I've seen you grow. I remember, I don't know if I told you this, one day I went to eat at one of my favorite Mexican places, El Taquito, mm-hmm. and I look over and you're there. Now, look, I've become a pretty popular plumber, but when I look around, I'm like, oh my God, that's Jimmy Dale. It's a pretty neat deal. And we've had those stories about you going out to eat. If you wear your blue shirt, mm-hmm. everybody in the world recognizes you.
Yeah.
If you don't wear it, they're like, man, I know that guy from somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's pretty funny. But to take a company from $350,000 to $100 million a year, it takes systems and processes and groups and partnerships and leadership. What do you think is the biggest thing that helped you grow over the years? Thinking outside the box?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it, cause we were just doing leak location and doing kind of insurance work, like slab leaks and repipes and all those things from 93 till probably about 2002. 2003 was when we got into home services. Like, we were literally turning you down. Like, if we were out doing all that kind of work and you go, hey, I got a water heater, it's busted. Man, we're like,
thanks.
Here, call this guy. He can come out and fix it. Cause our guys were 3 weeks booked. It was a great gig. We had no advertising. It was just a matter of like, hey, really all the logistics of and the systems and processes about the company. Well, then we get into 2000 and Dad's like, hey, this is going the other way. The mold stuff came out in the 2000s. The insurance companies made changes to the policies. He's like, hey, it looks like this is going to kind of dwindle. And I was like, well, Dad, we need to do something else. He's like, well, I think we ought to go. He was going to do something completely different. And I go, well, man, let's we got guys been here for 10 years and stuff. Let's try to do something. I mean, I think we feel like we should throw our hat in the ring to do something. He goes, well, I don't want to, throw good money after bad. I go, okay, I got it. So what happened? He goes, I'll give you $200,000 to start whatever you want to do. If it's home services or new construction was kind of the two things that we were looking at. We just had more experience and we'd been out to a lot of people's homes. So I said, hey, let's start with home services. Let's do that. I call around to everybody I knew in home services and they're like, oh, it's terrible, man. I had to cut 50% of my employee. I mean, it was a mess. Everybody that I knew, they were just telling me that not to get into it. I was like, well, it just seems the most natural thing for us to do. So, and really that's what happened. We just kind of got outside the box. Everybody was going in yellow pages. Like, they would get into 45 to 50 yellow pages. And I said, we're going to get in the main, we got in 3. And then what I did was just basically said, hey, look, Dalworth Carpet Cleaning was out. And I was like, they're branded in Dallas. And I was like, man, if a carpet cleaning company can brand themselves, then we can too. And that was kind of back to my, North Texas, entrepreneurship degree. Hey, brand the company, try to brand it and drive a brand. And so that's what we started to do. I said, hey, let's brand it and then drive them. So there's kind of two marketing. To me, marketing was a big part of what grew us. And to me, I've been very interested in it. I took it in college, but I had a great professor. Probably my best professor was a marketing professor I had. She was amazing. And it was just marketing 101. And I'll tell you, that marketing 101 book, there's guys that do that for a living that I deal with every day that don't know the basic common principles of like rule of 3 and, just stuff you're going, are you got really, it's incredible to me that that's what you do for a living and you don't know really much about it. But I basically did that. And what happened was I said, hey, let's brand, because I go, really, here's the thing. They said, don't ever brand your company. You just go out and you just put yourself where they'll find you when they need you. But what I was saying was like, well, okay, so when I go to look at that list, how do I pick? And I go, well, I recognize it's just a slight recognize that company. I've heard of that company's name. Like, you could have a tricky name, like a name that's kind of cool, and people might just go, that sounds familiar. I'll pick that one and call that one first. So that's kind of what we really started, was kind of in the marketing piece of doing a little different than everybody had done that. And then the next thing was to get into organizations, these modeling organizations where, hey, here's what your P&L is supposed to look like. Here's what your budget is. Here's how much you spend on marketing. Here's how much you do. And I'll be honest, the biggest mistake in our industry, and I've always believed this, and I always thought this is where we're really strong, the biggest mistake in our industry is the phone. That is your first point of contact. It is the most important conversation that you're going to have with your customer, and the next one's when the guy's actually at the house. But he never gets there if you don't have the first one. And the biggest problem was everybody paid their niece or nephew or whoever
$12 an hour,
$10 an hour, come work for me for a little bit. Most guys, like when you first started, you said how hard you're working. So imagine that you're working 20 hours a week. You had your phone in your pocket. You're over there in a ditch in the middle of like 105-degree weather, wondering why did you ever do this? And then all of a sudden here calls a customer. Hey, and you're like, what? I mean, you can't be in a good mood. You can't be a good, happy, cheerful customer service person. And I think every smaller company, the first thing I tell them to do is hire someone who is really good at that and give them direction and training on how to be really good and what you expect. And I go, so if everybody goes, I'll just start a company. I got my cell phone. I got a truck. I'm ready to go. And it's like, miss, no. And I'll be honest, the guys that did a really good job was they had a really smart wife, and the wife would answer the phone.
Yes.
Those guys actually did pretty good. But the phone is the most important thing, and the people on the other line are very, very important. So I think it's one of the combinations of customer service. Great customer service starts right there when they pick up the phone. And, not telling your customer no. That's really hard. Doing everything you can to fit in whatever it is that they ask for, because we're just almost used to I don't want to call and ask for reservations to the restaurant because they're going to tell me no, or they're going to tell me they're full, and the people just trying to always give a positive outlook on what's going on. And, and that's, I think the phone was the next thing. And then that I learned basically from these organizations, there's, Certain Path and there's a bunch of them out there now, but, just modeling against other, going to another owner. See, we go to what is it? I can't remember the organizations here locally. It's the heating, cooling contractors, PHCC.
Yep.
You go to PHCC. I mean, it's a great organization. They have good speakers and all this other stuff. But be honest, your competition's sitting right next to you, and they're not going to go, you know what I did on my average ticket? And no one's telling the truth. No one's really interacting and talking to each other. But you get these other national organizations, and this guy from Seattle's down, and he'll tell you everything because you're not in Seattle with him.
But, not even that. The first time I walked into SGI at the time, and I mean, I've gone in Service Nation, I've gone in Nexstar, SGI, I've been to a lot of them. You're like, hey, I'm in Dallas. Come visit me. I'm like, why would you talk to me? You're like, well, why wouldn't I? If, I've gone over and sat in Gus's office and talked to Gus. And it's like, look, if we can help each other, none of us want to be the cheapest guy in town. None of us want to be the most expensive. But if there's more of the most expensive, and I made a video on that. I remember getting a call one day. I'd gone out to Wiley to shoot a video, and the guy stayed home that day. So I climbed up under his house. We had tunneled up under there to make a repair. Slab leak and leak detection were a big deal for us. And I climbed out, and he's standing there and watching and smiling. And he says, can I tell you why I hired you? I said, absolutely. He said, it's that video you did, right? Where you said, I'm not the cheapest plumber in town. Never wanted to be. I never grew up thinking I want to be the cheapest guy in town. I grew up thinking I want to be the best guy in town. And whenever I finally started my own company, that's what we went by. How do we become the best? And it was neat because being able to walk in these organizations, I heard you speak on one day about your CSR, the lady who answers the phone says, look, I pay mine really, really good. It's the first voice that you hear at your company. You don't want some little kid, hey, hold on, ha, 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 giggling and cutting up.
Yeah.
You want somebody that sounds professional, that gets the call booked, that gets the information they need. And I was like, man, I love that. I'm lucky. Julie, whenever she saw how busy I was getting, she took over. Let me answer your phones. Let me do your billing. Let me do this. And I'm like, look, you don't have time for it. I got all this. She's like, no, you don't. Kind of like you and your dad. Dad, there's $45,000 sitting on the table right here. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Don't have time for it right now. I'm trying to make more money. So it's neat to hear. But I want to say that these organizations, I could never compete with Baker Brothers. I tell people that all the time. But be able to talk to you and you say, Roger, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? It's like, wow. So stuff like that is a big deal.
It's what happens too, is just like at different truck levels, everyone has the same problems. That's the funny part. It's like, everyone's like, oh, you don't understand. I have 3 trucks. I go, no, we had 3 trucks, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And there's a problem when you have 7, and you're going to have a problem when you have 10, and then you're going to have another problem when you have 12, and then you're going to have another problem when you have 17. And it is a weird thing. Like, you'll add a truck and you'll add personnel, and the numbers don't, you should go, okay, we make this much per truck per day. We added 2. Great. Well, they don't know how to work for you. We literally used to hand the keys to a new guy and go, hey, put your tools in the truck and here's your keys.
Yeah, here's your first call.
An onboarding or a training.
Yep.
Now we do 10-day onboarding, which is, if we don't do that, I don't care if the guy, I get really mad, because that's how you get the same thing going over and over again, is that. You can't do it any other way. So, anyway, when you get that, you have these different, but the math doesn't make sense. I added 2 trucks, and man, I'm only bringing in like a little bit extra. And it just doesn't make sense. And I'll be honest, it almost took 6 months every time for that to actually, the math is that, yes, when they get acclimated. The other part too is you're putting a lot of pressure in your office because you didn't change office staff and you added 3 trucks, but you haven't had one person in the office. So now the office is taking more phone calls, or dispatching more calls, doing more invoices. So there's all this stuff that's going on that just happens naturally. But it's funny, you can talk to different people in different areas of the country and talk to them at different levels, and they all say the same things. When the guy first gets out of his truck, he's like, okay, you've been plumbing for 20 something years. You're amazing and awesome, and you own the company. So every job, your name is all over it. And when I work for you, well, that's not the case. And then they want to I can't find anybody. You're not going to find anybody like you because they own their own company because they're the same way you are. I go, that's one of the things my wife said. I get frustrated with employees or whatever's going on. And she goes, well, Jimmy, if they were like you, they probably wouldn't work for you. And I was like, okay, I guess that's a good point. But that's what we try to do. We try to hire this perfection, especially early. And they realize, hey, 80% of me is pretty dang good. An 80% of me plumber is pretty amazing. So yeah, okay, now I'm starting to be able to hire people and put them in. And one of ours was background check, drug test. I mean, we had 10 trucks, and oh my gosh, it was the biggest mess ever. I mean, just every day was just so hard. And we do that, and we start eliminating some of those people from our organization. And wow, oh my gosh,
it runs a lot smoother.
We don't have all this little tiny problems that we had before. I mean, we have different problems that are bigger problems, but yeah, I mean, reliability, showing up when you're supposed to be there, getting your job done with quality, caring about what the job that you do, like caring about stepping away from the solder, all the joints you just did, and going, hey, would I be willing to put Jimmy Dale's name on that? Not Baker Brothers, but would I be willing to put my own personal name on it? I think Dinah Averiel said that one time to us in continuing education, and I thought that was probably one of the greatest things I've ever heard in continuing education. Was like, hey, step away from your work, look at it. Are you willing to put your personal name on there, not your company's name, but your name on it? And so just that in the trade, like instilling that kind of quality and that kind of pride. But if you live a lot of your life without pride and without that kind of quality, like how are you gonna really care that much about it? So that's a big one. Like when we started doing that, it was a big turning point for us and being serious about it. Like, hey, we don't need guys working that are just, trying to figure it out and that are messed up. And I don't know how many guys it stinks that had Michael Jordan talent in our industry, young guys that could talk to homeowners and communicate and were some of the best, fastest plumbers out there we've all been there and seen those guys. And then they can't get out of their own way. I mean, if it's even just something like getting in fights and getting put in jail or whatever it is that creates, it's like, man, you have so much talent and ability, and you could make so much money here in this industry. Just get your life right.
One thing you talked about, becoming a great plumber, becoming a good plumber, and not even good, becoming great, because there's a big difference in it. Some plumbers go out and learn what they have to do to survive every day. Some plumbers learn what they have to do to go in and win every day. When I got into the union, I was, of course, a horrible plumber. They don't know anything about me. I never learned in the union way. So I made it my goal every day I walked in to outperform every other plumber on the job. That way nobody could ever come in and say, oh, well, you know what? He does half quality work. He does anything like that. And I love that, because whenever I did have a problem with a guy who was a hardcore union guy on the job, we went up and talked to the superintendent, and he's like, Roger sits on a bucket. Roger's got headphones in. Roger does this. Roger does this. He said, okay, but how's Roger's work? Man, the guy kind of puts his head down. He said, look, you don't have any problem with his work. He puts it in true square and plumb every time. We never have to go back and fix a leak. So let me ask you this, because you see more plumbers than I ever have. Does it pay more to be a great plumber?
Yeah, I mean, in home services, unfortunately, guys that can really communicate, and I've had this happen. I've had a customer call me and go, man, I really hate to call in on John, but man, it flooded my house. I got 6 inch water. I go, whoa. I go, what? And he's like almost apologizing that John flooded his house. That John may get in trouble.
It wasn't his fault. Yeah.
Yes. And unfortunately, I've seen guys that really aren't that great technically, but really good with the customer, that I mean, they'll apologize when they mess up. But, I think, to be a great plumber, if you just want to be, like I said, the Michael Jordan of plumbing, it's like, really, it's just that combination of, because man, there's so many guys that are so technically sound and it's like, but they just run at the customer and go, here's how much it is. And the customers hate them. And I go, oh my God, they got done in like 25% of the time it normally takes to do that job. Got in and out of the house, thinking they're doing a big job for the customer, but, did it great, did it perfect, looks great. But the thing is, they didn't make the customer happy. So I guess it depends on if you're in new construction and remodel and stuff where you're not really dealing with the customer much, you're not face to face with the customer. I mean, I think just technical skill, that's great. But if you're going to be face to face with a customer and have to talk to him and bid a job and get him to sign off on it, make sure that it's great. I think it's the combination. The secret sauce is, hey, technically sound and communicate. So there's a lot of people too that are technically and they're kind of a hybrid. They're technically sound, but they also are really good communicators, but they learn that. So I think the mistake that a lot of people make is that it can be a learned behavior. Communication, leadership, those are two things you can learn to do. Just like when you got into the union and you didn't know, any of the tools or what you're doing, when you got in there, you didn't know anything and you learned how to be technically sound. Now, I think the other part is some guys are naturally better with their hands, like motor skills with their hands than other guys, and the guys that do have better motor skills typically do better technically, but that is a part. I always joke around and go, plumbers are such high detail people. Like we do these, culture index on all the guys that work for us, and their detail is super high, like accountant high.
Yeah.
But you have to realize you're taking all these things apart, like, diagnosing what's wrong with them, laying the parts out, you're putting them all back together again. It's very detailed, some detailed work. There's several, plumbing, there's several systems, natural gas, sewer, water, you got appliances, just look at a faucet book, like a faucet parts book.
It's giant.
There's like probably 4 of them, like that,
Yep.
for all of them. So it's just like that's a high level detail person. So I always go, it's like trying to get your accountant to go in and sell something to somebody. Accountants are very detailed people, but they're not usually typically very good salespeople. So it's kind of mixing that, hey, your technical skill with communication and kind of having some EQ, like, understanding the customer and where they're at, because empathy goes a long way. Just feeling, walking a mile in someone else's shoes goes a long way. And if you want to close a job, like I always tell the girls in the call center, you want to close a job or make a customer that's upset calm down, it's real simple. Make an empathy statement and a promise of resolution. All you have to do is say, oh my gosh, that water heater, it busted. Did it flood anything? I mean, do y'all need help that way? And I go, no, we're good. We got it shut off. Okay, thank goodness. Well, hey, we can get you hot water by the end of the day. They're going to sign up with you.
You bet.
If they're upset and instead of defending your position, you go, hey, that's not what is supposed to happen when you use our company. That is not the expectation we have. I'm so sorry you've experienced this. Hey, I'll get everything. I'm going to find out what's going on with your job. And by the end of the day, I'll have a resolution for you. 100%. They go from you sorry SOBs to like, hey, oh, they're on my team. Hey, I have an expectation of service and what they normally tell me when they're upset, that is not okay by me. And it makes me mad.
You bet.
Just like it's making
we
them
take
mad.
it personally.
Exactly. But the problem is sometimes we get defensive because, hey, I know that guy and man, I've grown up with that guy and that guy works for me and man, he's a good dude. Well, okay, but he might've had a bad day or maybe the communication went wrong. But I think kind of it, like to ask like, hey, what's the best plumber? It all depends on what kind of job you're doing. Like I said, commercial, new construction, home services, remodel. That all depends on what you're doing and to what skills you need. I think I always like to tell everybody, go, hey, this is not playing checkers. Stop using everybody like they're a checker and they only move one way and they only have 2 rules. Play it like chess. We all move different ways. We all have different skill sets. The game of chess is that way, and you're trying to win using a lot of different people in a lot of different ways that move different ways. And it's like that, and football is the same way. And football, you cannot put Tom Brady at center, who is, the GOAT, and be even serviceable. The type of people in football are so different, their skill sets. But that's how the team works. And I think that's how we try to do with our team too, is like grab different guys that have different skill sets. I mean, we have guys that aren't very good, that don't talk to people very well. And man, we'll put them on a water heater truck, and all they got to do is go out and sign the paper and put the water heater in, and they love it. I can't get them off of it. If you made me do water heaters every day, I'd go crazy.
And me both.
But I'm telling you, man, there's people that love to hit the red button every day. It doesn't change. It's always the same. And we got to realize, hey, they're not all wired the way we are. They're not moving the way we move. Like, let's put people in situations they really can flourish. And I'll be honest, like if somebody just can't flourish at the company, you can be a horrible home service plumber. I mean, horrible. And you can be a rock star in new construction world. I mean, it is a 100% truth. And so there are things and skill sets that you do have to match up.
I love that, because I have done residential, commercial, service, new construction, industrial, non-union, union, non-union again. So, man, I hear you. It's a completely different mindset, skill set everywhere you go. Leadership, communications, and even personality styles. You talk about EQ, learning how to communicate with people, and then learning what kind of personality styles they are. If I'm talking to you and you're a high D, I tell people all the time, look, I'm a high D. If you walk in to sell me a water heater and you go through your spiel and I say, how much is it? Next words out of your mouth better be a number. Now you can say that number's a buttload. Can I tell you why it's so expensive? Absolutely. You told me the number. But if you walk in and tell me, well, you know what? I haven't told you everything about it. Let me do this. Let me do this. Let me do this. By now you've lost me. I asked you a question. Just give me the direct answer. So I love that we try to teach our plumbers about the different personality styles. How do you communicate with people different? And that's just a big deal. Leadership and communications, to me, like you said, are the two biggest things that plumbers, once they know that takes them to a whole new level. Because no matter what your construction, talking to the GC, or your residential, you're talking to the wife normally, or the husband, whichever. And if you can get them both together, then it's great, because you can talk to both of them. That way you handle any problems they've got. And that makes it really good for me. What about coaches and mentors? Who helped you in the beginning other than your dad, which definitely imparted a lot of wisdom on you?
Yeah.
But any other coaches or mentors or anybody that you looked outside to learn from?
Yeah. I mean, I always, one of them, when we got into SGI, Alan O'Neill was one that I go, hey, he's doing some stuff that we're not doing, that I need to kind of, because, training was really hard. Training plumbers is difficult. We're really hard-headed. And I was telling somebody, hey, I'm a 4th generation master plumber, so I can say all this, and I've actually been on tools. Like a lot of people go, oh, you don't ever. I go, yeah, no, I have, just not lately.
Right.
I go, but I want to say that, like noticing that, hey, that there's a segment of his business and how he trained that was different than ours. And I go, hey, I need to learn what is he doing? How's that happening? So Alan was probably in industry, my dad. But I also had a lot of people, I think, along the way, like, just reading books and learning and like, having, I have a guy named Tom Meyer that was like a business coach, leadership coach. Tom was like a, Harvard MBA, went to Annapolis, was on a nuclear sub. He's probably, I think he's early 80s now, but he was in his 70s at the time, but Tom had worked at Hewlett Packard and all these big companies. So he had a lot of information and a lot of, and he would call you out and go, hey, BS Jimmy, you need to do this, So there was a good part of that. Just looking for someone to coach and mentor you is important, and to be honest, a lot of the guys weren't very approachable that should have been, that were like way ahead of us. And, I don't think I need to name names, but they were leading a lot of these groups, and they were just these like rock stars. Hey, don't come talk to me. Don't jump in. I went out to Mike Diamond's place years ago, and man, he was very cordial. Like, hey, showed me around, and man, talked to me and really talked to me at a level that really helped out. Just one conversation, one day that helped a lot. So, I think that's what you have to do is, like, people want to grow their business, but like everybody wants to win. but not everybody wants to do what it takes to win.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the thing is like, you have to be able to go, okay, look, if I want to grow my business 25%, and I heard a guy say this at the luncheon, do you want to grow your business 25%? Are you willing to become a 25% better leader? And it's like, they're like, I mean, you kind of go,
wow.
no, I just was like kind of hanging out and doing this stuff. So I've got, I was certain path. I've been in Nexstar for stint. I've been in like I'm currently and still in probably creeping up on 10 years in Vistage, a CEO group. There's YPO. I haven't been in that, but getting involved in these different things and being well read and like reading business books, listening to business books. I hate reading. I'll get on a 6 month.
You and me both.
I will read 7 books in 6 months and I won't touch a book for a year, but I found this thing Audible and I can just throw it, in the truck on the way to work, listen to a couple of chapters on the way to work of the business book. So I like to do that stuff. Like people that just come in and speak, like Vistage, they come in and have these guys that speak for 2 hours. Very, very good stuff. Got another guy named Nicky Nemiroff who helps us out. He's a business coach as well. Bubba, that's my VP. He and Nicky are very tight. Nicky helps us with a lot of like just kind of the personalities, the different kind of personalities. And, really what we were having a hard time with and what Nicky did is we're like, man, we're driving these numbers and driving sales. It'd be great. But we'd forget about all the people. Oh, what about the customers and the employees? Like, yeah, guys, those guys are over there.
They're not just numbers.
Yes, let's not throw the 80 hours a week towards these guys and think everything's going to be okay. I go, so let's make sure. And so the balance always was then we got real people oriented. And then all the numbers went to heck. And so that's what I brought Nicky in is bringing outside help and a specialist, someone who's great, knows business, and is a great leader, and go, Nicky, help us manage both of these sides. Help us to do where we're driving the number, but we're taking care of the people. Help us to be, my biggest thing is I don't want to be undercover boss. I don't want to be in there with a fake mustache, sitting with my guy, thinking that I'm, hey, up in your little ivory tower that you're like, oh man, we do all these special things for our customers, all these special things for our guys. And man, we're helping everybody out. And then the undercover boss, they find out when they go in there that lady, single mom, is eating cat food and can't afford anything and is on stamp, food stamp, the whole nine. And you're like, and he's in there crying and then handing her a check for 70 grand or something.
Right.
I said, man, I don't want to be that guy. I want to know the reality, not the little, I always go, Disney World's really cool in the front, but if you go around the back of the castle, it just looks like the back of a building. I said, it's not the facade of awesome. It's like we actually are awesome. That's what we're trying to do. And I'm not saying we are being non-humble about that, but I just want to say,
no, you've got to have something to shoot for.
Yeah.
Why not try to be the very best?
And that's what I tell the guys.
Exactly what I hear.
Every time you go to a house, I want you to be the best service person they've ever had in their home. Better than the lady that comes and cleans every week, better than the guy that mows their yard, better than anyone who's ever been in their house. That should be your goal when you walk up to the door. And then when you walk out, evaluate yourself, be critical and go, was I the best? Every meeting that I have, I walk out of the meeting and I go, okay, did I achieve what I wanted to in that meeting? How did I do in that meeting? And I've graded myself poorly, and I think you have to. There's
if you're being honest.
I know, and the problem is that we think we're always awesome. And I tell everybody, I go, you don't know you suck unless someone says you suck. I go, we think, hey, I'm doing a great job at work. Hey, man, I'm awesome. And then everybody else around you is like, oh my God, you're the worst guy here. And that's where sometimes I've had guys, and it's funny, Sean Sabi's a young plumber that, he still works for us, but when he was really young and he's just on a truck, came up and goes, man, they're only giving me faucet calls, man. This is, I go, well, hey, on those faucet calls, are you giving a price to fix the drip? And then giving a price to, for the faucet? And then are you giving a price to say, hey, let's redo the sink, the disposal with a 3/4 horse disposal and all new plumbing underneath, those get rid of those stains in the cabinet, get rid of that burnt orange sink, and then a new, deal for $2,500. And, hey, you save $1,000. And he goes, well, no. And I go, well, you suck. And he still remembers this day and he laughs about it. And he goes, you told me I sucked. And I go, yeah, because
at the time you did
at that job. Why would the guy give you more jobs and better jobs? Yeah. If you don't achieve the max that you could on the job you're given, why would all of a sudden he give you a major gas job out of nowhere? I go, he has to feel comfortable. The owner or manager has to feel comfortable that you can achieve the results to give you those things. And usually what we're trying to say is The problem usually is inward. It's usually you that's the issue, not them.
9 out of 10 times.
And I go, if you'll just do your job, like, if you'll do it differently. And so, it's funny, he kind of got his feelings hurt a little bit, but then he kind of laughed, and I laughed too. I was just joking with him, but I said, dude, you got to do it this way. And I'll be honest, right now, one of our best guys, by far one of our best guys. And, he's top 10 of 86 guys all day long. That, I'll be honest, in the 86 guys, if you're probably number 70, you might be number 2 at another company.
Right.
I mean, they're good, solid guys. And so he's now, and but he still remembers that, 10 years later, he's like, yeah, I remember when you said that to me, when you did that. And it was just the realization of, like, there's a lot of work I have to do. And so when I think for us all to be successful, we have to have a certain criticism of ourselves and to be a great leader. You can't just go, if you're getting upset and the people aren't following you or they're not doing what you want them to do, take responsibility for that and go, how can I lead differently that I could get them to kind of come with me? What am I not doing right here? That's, one of my buddies wanted to be like, that works for, he wanted to, like, hey, I want to get up there and talk in front of everybody, and I said, well, here's what you want to do. Everyone who gets up and speaks and you go, oh my gosh, that was amazing. Pay attention to what was it that made you think that was amazing? What was it? Their tone? Was it how they inflected their voice? Was it the stories they told? What are the key things you could say, hey, these are takeaways for me? Now, when somebody's really terrible, same thing. What made that horrible? And one of the times in Vistage, we had a great content, but horrible delivery, but great content. And so it was like, you could go, okay, that's delivery. I said, if it's okay, I don't know if you pay a lot of attention to it, but really good, pay attention. Really bad, pay attention. So I think that's the same thing in our trades. Really good, pay attention. Really bad, pay attention. I mean, I think one of the things that's the coolest thing is the mentorships that happen within the companies. The older guy, taking on a younger guy, how proud the older guy is when the younger guy who's an apprentice, that was his apprentice, becomes a really good plumber.
You bet.
It's funny. He could be like, oh man, I showed him all the tricks of the trade and he's, competitively chasing me. He's right behind me. Or what I love is the guys are really proud. They're really proud. Like, hey, they want him to be right there behind them
every day.
They're like, hey man, I helped that guy get there. And it's really cool to, like, give someone a way to make a living and give somebody a way to support their family is such an awesome thing. And I think that's what the guys are starting to do a lot more of these days. Used to back in the day, I think the guys were proud of us, but never tell us, as they cussed us and yelled at us and told us to just go step and fetch.
Yeah.
But no, I think it's I like it where it's going. I really like where the trades are going. I like where the young guys, the millennials that everybody was so scared of, that didn't want to work and didn't want to do all these things. I'm like, we said, hey man, okay, what's the positives? And I'm telling you, we have more millennials working for us now than ever in the history of the company as far as the age group. And that's what we said. How do we become a millennial magnet? How do we become a magnet for those guys?
Like that. All right, we're running out of time. I got about a minute to finish up here. If you could go back and talk to young Jimmy the day he first walked out of the house to go to his plumbing job, his trade shop, whatever trade it is, if you could go back knowing what you know now and talk to Jimmy that day, literally you're standing there when he walks out the front door. If you could give him one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, that's a thinker. It might actually take me more than a minute to think about that. But I really, I went to work serious every day. Like I was 21 and I was ready to go. And I told people, I got ahead of all my buddies because they didn't decide till they're 26 or 30 to go, hey, let's get serious about my career and work. So I don't think I had a problem with focus or, hey, Jimmy, you need to work harder or whatever. I will say this. I'd probably say, hey, you need to, like, expand and not be scared to get into other things. Like when we're doing one kind of work, it's funny. And as plumbing, we're like, we only can do this kind of work. And ours at the time was slab leaks and locations and repairs. And I would say, man, there's nothing wrong with us doing a home services business now. Like we could have got started in 1993, 1994. And I think I'd also say, hey, you need to get outside of just your office because that's the only place we got information from was our office. My dad, myself, us thinking about and trying to innovate. I would go, hey, we need to find places that we can get with other plumbing companies and other owners and people that have been there and done that before us and talk to them and copy what they do. It was so bad in school to copy the guy's paper. I will literally take your paper right now and just put Baker Brothers right on the top of it.
You bet.
And it is completely and totally fine. And it saves me a ton of time. So I think that's probably what I would do is don't be scared to get outside of things. Because, you know, Alan O'Neill, he and I talked a lot, still do. Alan said, hey, I'll do AC when I master plumbing. Well, we're never going to master plumbing.
Absolutely.
So you'd never do AC. But it's so funny that we don't take our customer base and add these other trades onto it because it ramps so fast. So even if so I've got 6,000 customers. If those 6,000 customers love you use a plumber, they will love using you as AC. They will love using as an electrician. So you expand your you see a lot of people doing multi-trades now. And it just, because you're using the same 6,000 customers and you're just taking care of their whole entire house. So I think that would be what I say. Don't be scared to get into other things and feel like that you have to master what you're doing before you do that. I don't agree with getting into it too early and go, hey, I've got 2 plumbing trucks and I'm going to do an AC thing. I think you should at least get to a level and ramp to a level and then start looking at doing other things, because we could have got really like started in service. There was not a reason in the world for us not to do it besides just our own fear of that we couldn't do it well.
I love that. Jimmy, if people want to get in touch with you about Baker Brothers, how to go to work for you, how to talk to you, how to learn from you, anything like that, where can they find you at? Yeah,
you can just email me at jdale@bakerbrothers.plumbing.com, and it'll go right into my email, and I'll answer you back and let you know whatever and just any questions you have. Because like you said, I'm not a big believer in, oh, we're in competition with each other, I can't tell you anything. I'm a believer in like, hey, if we raise the level of all competition, it's good for all of us.
Man, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
Thanks. It was great.